কথা বলা শেষ করলে।
জি ম্যাম।
ম্যাম আমরা লাইভে চলে এসেছি, আমরা অফিসিয়ালি শুরু করতে পারি এখন।
আচ্ছা, thank you. So, good evening, friends, colleagues, and students. It's indeed a great pleasure and honor for me to be the moderator of such an exciting session today, because we'll be talking about cardiogenic shock. Now, cardiogenic shock is something that will often be asked in the exams, and not only that, even in our career as a cardiologist, we will often have to face and treat patients who come to us with cardiogenic shock. And we all understand that these patients are really, really sick and they require our greatest attention. And it is indeed a great honor for us today that we have Professor Amol, who has joined us to be an expert panel. He is one of the most versatile academicians of Bangladesh, interventional cardiologists, and it is truly an honor for us that he constantly helps us with our academic endeavors. And today we've got two great speakers with us. We've got Dr. Farad Jamal, and after that we've got Dr. Dhiman Bonik. So we're really excited that we will be learning a lot. So before we start our session, I would just like to say that today with me as co-moderator, I have Dr. Tawfiq Shariarov, and I would request Dr. Amol to say a few words before we start the session. Dr. Amol.
Thank you, madam, for it's my pleasure to invite me and involved in the academic activity of your institute. It's my pleasure and also honor. And your topics, today's topic is also very important because in my institute, I recently took a class of what are the cardiac emergency in the last month. So I feel recent knowledge about to contribute your knowledge because I have gone through the emergency. What are the, we asked the examination, they tell me the very common for cardiac emergency, but the student suddenly stuck up with the spellbound like this question. So your effort is, I think, very helpful for the student. Thank you, ma'am. We can start.
So thank you, Professor Amol. And we will have a question answer session once our two speakers finish with their talk. So without further ado, I would request Dr. Farad Jamal to tell us about cardiogenic shock, its pathophysiology, causes, clinical symptoms. And Dr. Farad Jamal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, Amol sir, and thank you, learned audience. Assalamu alaikum. My today's topic is cardiogenic shock, its basic pathophysiology, definition, and others. I'm starting my presentation. Shock is a serious life-threatening medical emergency and is one of the most common cause of death for critically ill patients. Shock is defined as inadequate tissue perfusion that can be caused by various diseases that results in decreased oxygenation at cellular level.
Presentation mode.
Yes, I am in the presentation mode. Oh, sorry, sir. Okay. If we define the types of shock, circulatory shock are four distinct categories according to underlying mechanism. It can be cardiogenic shock, which is characterized by primary myocardial dysfunction, and heart cannot maintain adequate cardiac output. And this patient demonstrates clinical sign of low cardiac output with adequate intravascular volume. Whereas hypovolemic shock results from loss of blood volume, and possible reason for which is gastrointestinal bleeding, acceleration of the plasma, mesosurgery, trauma, and severe burn. Other type of shock is obstructive shock, which results from impedance of circulation by an intrinsic or extrinsic obstruction, like pulmonary embolism, dissecting aneurysm, and pericardial tamponade. The last type is distributive shock, which is characterized by decreased systemic vascular resistance or increased venous capacitance because of vasomotor dysfunction and vasodilatation. This patient has high cardiac output instead of low cardiac output, hypotension, high pulse pressure, low diastolic pressure, and warm extremity with good capillary leakage. Septic shock and anaphylactic shock and neurogenic shock are common example of this type. Next, cardiogenic shock. It can be defined as severe impairment of myocardial performance that results in diminished cardiac output, in organ hypoperfusion or damage, and hypoxia in the presence of adequate intravascular volume. What does it in organ hyperperfusion or damage mean? It is characterized by decreased urine output to less than 0.5 ml per minute or less than 30 ml per hour, cold extremities, altered mental status, and in blood serum lactate level more than 2 millimole per liter. What are the hemodynamic criteria? There are lots of criteria in different studies. Here we are following the shock trial, which says that sustained hypotension, that is systolic blood pressure less than 90 millimeter of mercury for 30 minutes or more, or vasopressor support that is required to maintain a systolic blood pressure of more than 90 millimeter. That is one criteria. Another criteria is reduced cardiac index of less than 2.2 liter per minute per meter square body surface area, and presence of normal or elevated pulmonary capillary pressure that is more than 15 millimeter mercury, or right ventricular end diastolic pressure more than 10 millimeter mercury. This I have already said that there are lots of criteria from different studies, but we are following the shock trial and the criteria of the shock trial that is most popular. Now, if you look at the common causes of cardiogenic shock, acute myocardial infarction with LV failure represents 60 to 80% of the cardiogenic shock. List other causes are cardiac and extracardiac. Other cardiac causes are right heart failure, myopericarditis, arrhythmia, Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, valvular heart disease, and postpartum cardiomyopathy. What are the extracardiac causes? These are aortic dissection, which may result in aortic stenosis or myocardial infarction, traumatic caudal rupture, and massive pulmonary embolism. If we look at the etiology according to our underlying primary pathophysiology, it can be further categorized as primary LV systolic dysfunction caused by acute myocardial infarction, ischemia, valvular heart disease, or myocardial depression drug. Left ventricular diastolic dysfunction, which can be caused by ischemia, ventricular hypertrophy, restrictive cardiomyopathy, consequent of prolonged hypovolemic or septic shock, and pericardial tamponade. Greatly increased afterload may be act as a primary pathophysiology in aortic stenosis, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, and coarctation of the aorta. Valvular structure anomalies, abnormalities may play a role, like mitral stenosis, endocarditis, mitral or aortic regurgitation, obstruction due to atrial myxoma or thrombus, papillary muscle dysfunction or rupture, and rupture septum or tree wall, which may be secondary to myocardial infarction. RV dysfunction also may play primary role, especially when there is right ventricular infarction, pulmonary embolism, pulmonary vascular disease, acute respiratory distress syndrome. Arrhythmia has important role in the mechanism of the cardiogenic shock. Cause may be atrial or ventricular arrhythmias, causing tachycardia-mediated cardiomyopathy or secondary to conduction abnormality. If we look at the pathophysiology, the primary insult is the reduction in the myocardial contractility, resulting in diminished cardiac output, causing hypotension, systemic vasoconstriction, and cardiac ischemia. Low or systemic release of catecholamines occurs, which may initially improve the coronary and peripheral perfusion by transient increase in myocardial gonotropy and inotropy, but at the cost of increased rate of arrhythmia and peripheral vasoconstriction, which exacerbates the afterload and myocardial perfusion mismatch, causing further ischemia. This maladaptive compensatory mechanism further aggravates the condition and diminish oxygenation of the blood flow and to the peripheral tissue also. The systemic inflammatory response system or SARS cause inappropriate vasodilatation in the later part, and also may cause capillary leakage, microvascular dysfunction, hypoperfusion, and in-organ damage, most gravely in the intestinal tract, which predisposes to the sepsis. So, cardiogenic shock later may mix with the septicemic shock also, if it is untreated for a long time. Systemic inflammatory response related effectors like tumor necrotic factor and genetic 6 is the further cardiodepression, further aggravating the condition. Neurohumoral activation of the renin-angiotensin system results in increased salt and water retention, adding to the burden of the preload and decompensated heart failure. What are the conditions of the right ventricle? Right ventricular failure occurs when ventricular diastolic and or systolic pressure are insufficiently compensated by normal myocardial RV process to provide appropriate stroke volume. RV is characteristically less adaptive to the pressure afterload in comparison to the volume overload, hence unable to tolerate severely elevated pulmonary artery pressure, which occurs in this condition. As RV failure results in RV dilatation, the interventricular septum is displaced into the left ventricular space, compromising the LV function further and diastolic filling and further aggravating the systemic hypoperfusion. This is the schematic diagram showing what are all the conditions which I have already described. I'm not going in details. Just one thing, ventricular tachycardia, storm, or atrial fibrillation or flutter may intervene at any part of this condition, which may further deteriorate rapidly the condition. Two other conditions which should be mentioned here, because which contributes to cardiogenic shock, even myocardium is not fully damaged. These are myocardial stunning and hibernating myocardium. But there are large area of non-functional but viable myocardium that can contribute to the development of the cardiogenic shock in patient after myocardial infarction. These two conditions. What is myocardial stunning? It represents post-ischemic dysfunction that persists despite of restoration of the normal blood flow. And myocardial dysfunction from the stunning eventually resolves completely when restoration is complete. What is myocardial hibernating myocardium? It is a state of persistently impaired myocardial perfusion at rest. That is, after it is adaptive response after prolonged critically decreased blood flow to myocardium, which occurs because of severely reduced coronary blood flow. Revascularization of hibernating and or stunned myocardium generally leads to improved myocardial function. That is its beauty. Now, if you look at the pressure volume curve in case of cardiogenic shock, in the left-hand side, it is the normal pressure volume curve, while in the right-hand side, it is the pressure volume curve in case of cardiogenic shock. What happens? In case of cardiogenic shock, the pressure volume curve shifted towards right, as a result of which LV end diastolic pressure that is raised, LV end diastolic volume that is also raised, and stroke volume, there is a difference between the isometric volumetric relaxation and isometric contraction that is squeezed here. That is, so stroke volume is also decreased. So we can say that in case of cardiogenic shock, the pressure volume curve is shifted towards right and upwards. At the same time, it is squeezed from outside so that stroke volume is greatly decreased. What is the cellular pathology of cardiogenic shock? There are two things: tissue hypoperfusion and cellular hypoxia, which causes anaerobic glycolysis, causing the lactic acidosis, intracellular acidosis, failure of the energy-dependent ion transport pump, causing intracellular accumulation of the sodium and calcium, which leads to myocardial swelling, cellular ischemia, and intracellular calcium accumulate that activate intracellular protease, causing mitochondrial swelling, accumulation and denaturation of the protein and chromatin in the cytoplasm. Lysosomal breakdown occurs and mitochondria fracture occurs, leading to irreversible myocardial cellular injury. If you look at the epidemiology, it can be said that cardiogenic shock is the second most common cause of circulatory shock, representing 16% case of patient presenting with shock. Cardiogenic shock complicates 5 to 10% case of acute myocardial infarction, and is the leading cause of death after acute myocardial infarction. The median time from the onset of infarction to shock develops in 5 to 6 hours. Left ventricular systolic dysfunction is the most common frequent cause and occurs in about 75% of the cases. Infarct location is anteriorly in most cases, there is 55%. 58% case has multiple locations. Inferior infarction found in 46%. Posterior infarction in 21% cases. In around 60% of the patients, they have triple vessel disease, while left main disease encountered in 20% of the cases. Left antidistinct artery is found in the most frequently involved artery. Accessible elevation myocardial infarction is associated with a twofold increased risk of development of cardiogenic shock compared to non-accessible elevation myocardial infarction. Non-accessible elevation myocardial infarction-related cardiovascular shock has increased risk of mortality in comparison to statistically elevation microinfarction due to delay in the treatment, cardiac catheterization, PCI, and a coronary bypass drug. Despite of advance in the management, cardiogenic shock carries a poor prognosis with high mortality and morbidity. That around 40 to 60% of the patient with cardiogenic shock will die within 6 months. While in-hospital mortality has improved, the 6 to 12 months mortality of cardiogenic shock has remained unchanged at 50% over the last 2 decades. Survival of the microinfarction associated cardiogenic shock have around 18% risk of 30 days readmission after discharge with a median time of 30 days. The most common cause of readmission are congestive heart failure and reinfarction or new infarction. Female sex, low socioeconomic status, mechanical circulatory support, device placement like ECMO, IABP, atrial fibrillation, ventricular tachycardia. These are the predictors of readmission. These are the predisposing factors for cardiogenic shock. Age, these are as per shock trial. Age more than 65 years, female gender, prior history of hypertension, increased heart rate, kidney class, higher daily class, uncontrolled diabetes, anterior infarction, large infarction, history of previous infarction, patient having peripheral vascular disease, and patient having very low ejection fraction. Now, clinical presentation of and physical examination. Clinical presentation of 3 types actually: cold and wet subtype, dry and cold subtype, wet and warm subtype. What are these? Let's see. In cold and wet subtype, patient with cardiogenic shock most commonly present with cool extremities with sign of pulmonary congestion and reflects a reduced cardiac index, increased systemic vascular resistance, and increased pulmonary capillary waste pressure. Whereas in dry and cold subtype indicates a reduced cardiac index, increased systemic vascular resistance, but normal pulmonary capillary waste pressure. Evaluating presentation are more likely to have previous MI or chronic kidney disease in comparison to the first time. Wet and warm subtype usually occurs, especially when it is complicated by systemic inflammatory response and sepsis. The patient has reduced cardiac output, but systemic vascular resistance is reduced or normal, and pulmonary capillary pressure is increased. If you look at the history, what of the patient has hypotension, absence of hypovolemia as it is cardiogenic shock. There is clinical signs of poor tissue perfusion like oliguria, cyanosis, cold extremity, altered mentation. If it is due to myocardial infection, patient has chest pain, suggestive of acute myocardial infarction. Pain may be atypical or may be absent in diabetic and elderly individual. Patient also may report associated autonomic symptoms, including nausea, vomiting, and sweating. Other associated symptoms like diaphoresis, exertional dyspnea, and dyspnea at rest may present. Syncope or syncope, palpitation, generalized anxiety, and other features indicative of poor cardiac function may present. A history of previous cardiac disease, use of cocaine, previous myocardial infarction, previous cardiac surgery should be obtained, and the risk factor for coronary artery disease should be evaluated. On physical examination, the skin is usually pale or cyanotic and cool. Extremities are motile. Patient has tachycardia and pulse volume is low, and it may be irregular if arrhythmia is present. Systemic hypotension and is present, and pulse pressure may be low. Jugular venous distension, freckles in the lung, and peripheral edema may also be present. Heart sounds are distant, and third and fourth heart sound may be present. Evidence of hypoperfusion like sinus tachycardia, low urine output, and cold extremity are present. Systemic murmur present in acute mitral regurgitation and ventricular septal rupture. And there may be also other physiology, other findings as per etiology. But I'm highlighting here myocardial infarction as it comprises 60 to 80% of the cause of cardiogenic shock. What is the differential diagnosis? Actually, the differential diagnosis are the different types of cardiac shock, circulatory shock, and the etiological consideration, like massive pulmonary embolism, acute dissecting aneurysm of the aorta, acute cardiac tamponade, acute hemorrhage, cerebrovascular thrombosis, diabetic acidosis, acute pancreatitis, and acute adrenal insufficiency. With this, I am concluding my lecture, and my second lecture, I request my second lecturer to give his lecture. Thank you very much.
Yes, Farhad, thank you very much for this elaborate discussion. So our next speaker uh, is going to be our Associate Professor Dr. Dhiman Bonik sir, who will be speaking on diagnosis and management of shock. Dhiman sir, you may start. Sir, your screen is now visible.
Visible? Is visible?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr.
Yes, sir.
Taufik.
Visible and
Yes, sir.
audible, sir. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Taufik. Respected teachers, respected moderator, colleagues and friends. Today my topic is on investigation management of cardiogenic shock. At first, the investigation is a very simple investigation. It is an ECG. From ECG in cardiogenic shock patient, we have many elaborate and many helpful diagnoses in making a diagnosis of acute MI or myocardial ischemia. And it is though a simple test, but it should be well visualized and well differentiated from ECG. A normal ECG, however, does not rule out the possibility of acute MI. The next investigation is a complete blood count. A complete blood count gives us the helpful in excluding anemia in case of cardiogenic shock, and a WBC count will have indicate the underlying infection, and the platelet count may look after to a coagulopathy or related sepsis. The important thing is that cardiac angiogram should be done. It is the troponin I level. Troponin I level is widely used for the diagnosis of myocardial injury. Troponin elevation in the absence of clinical evidence of ischemia should prompt the search of any other cardiac damage such as myocarditis. Troponin I can be detected in the serum in patients with chronic kidney disease, sepsis, heart failure, chemotherapy-related damage of the heart, pulmonary embolism, or in case of myocarditis. A patient with cardiogenic shock should be done an arterial blood gas analysis, which gives us an overall acid-base hemostasis and the level of the arterial blood oxygenation. The base deficit elevation correlates with the occurrence and severity of shock. It is the very important finding in case of cardiogenic shock for the treatment purpose. A base deficit is also an important marker to the follow during resuscitation of a patient with shock. The important chemical investigation is the lactate. My previous speaker, Dr. Farhad, has elaborated that in shock, lactic acidosis occurs, and the lactate level is the prognostic and the diagnostic marker of cardiogenic shock. Rising lactate values during resuscitation prudent to a very high mortality in case of cardiogenic shock. Steroidic peptide may be useful as an indicator of congestive cardiac failure as an independent prognostic indicator for survival. A low BNP level may be effectively rule out cardiogenic shock in a setting of hypotension. However, an elevated BNP level does not rule out the disease. The important bedside investigation is an echocardiography, which will give us the important clue of global and regional systolic function and diastolic dysfunction of the heart. And it will give us the clue cause of cardiogenic shock in patient. It may give us the important clue of papillary muscle rupture or causing mitral regurgitation, acute ventricular septal rupture, defect in the free wall rupture, or a pericardial tamponade. A chest X-ray, bedside chest X-ray is also important in differentiating the cause of cardiogenic shock or a patient with shock. The aortic dissection, in aortic dissection, the mediastinal shadow may be enlarged, and in X-ray, there may be a feature of tension pneumothorax and a collapsed lung margin, which may be features of tension pneumothorax. The other radiological finding of left ventricular failure can be found in the chest X-ray, such as interstitial pulmonary edema, bilateral pleural effusion, Carlis B-line, cardiomegaly, alveolar edema. Now the management issue. These are the headlines of the management purpose: stabilization and resuscitation strategy, oxygen and ventilation, hemodynamic monitoring, vasopressor support, fibrinolytics, and revascularization with PCI or CEBG, and mechanical circulatory support device. Now, first of all, the intravenous fluid resuscitation is a clinical challenge in patients with cardiogenic shock, as it is often difficult to assess whether the patient is on hypovolemia and can vary over time. A right-sided heart failure or right atrial pressure or pulmonary capillary waste pressure are poor predictor for fluid response. If hypovolemia is present, a conservative bolus dose of crystalloids about 250 to 500 ml may stabilize the patient. Continuous oxygen pulse oximetry should be used to monitor for respiratory compromise. Oxygen goals vary depending on patient comorbidities, but in acute care setting, blood oxygen saturation should be more than 90% is acceptable. When non-invasive form of oxygenation and ventilation are inadequate, invasive ventilation is required. Now the vasopressor agent. Among the vasopressor agent, dopamine is commonly used in our clinical practice. Dopamine is an endogenous catecholamines which acts on 3 receptors: dopaminergic receptor, beta receptor, and alpha receptor. At a low dose, at less than 5 microgram per kg per minute, dopamine acts on the dopaminergic receptors, and it dilates the renal, mesenteric, and coronary vessel. At a moderate dose of 5 to 10 microgram per kg per minute, dopamine acts on the beta-1 receptor, and it increases the myocardial contractility and increase the heart rate. At a higher dose of more than 10 or 12 microgram per kg per minute, dopamine classically acts on the alpha receptor, which causes generalized vasoconstriction and increase the blood pressure. It is said that if dopamine should be not used at a higher dose above 12 microgram per kg per minute for about more than 1 hour, as because it may cause renal vasoconstriction also, and renal compromise may be happen. So the adverse effect of dopamine are tachycardia, tachyarrhythmia, and excessive vasoconstriction. The other vasopressor drug is dobutamine. Regarding dobutamine, the important issue is that among the all vasopressor drug, dobutamine is the most potent beta-1 stimulant, and it at a dose of 2 to 15 microgram per kg, it increases cardiac contractility and the heart rate. The positive chronotropic effect occurs at a lesser extent than dopamine. But in addition, dobutamine is a potent beta-2 stimulant, so it causes peripheral vasodilatation leading to hypotension. So this drug means dobutamine should not be used until the systolic blood pressure is above 80 or 90 millimeter of mercury. Chronic therapy of dobutamine may cause eosinophilic or hypersensitivity myocarditis, resulting in hemodynamic deterioration. Next, the important vasopressor drug of recent time is norepinephrine or noradrenaline. It is the most commonly used vasopressor drug now used in all forms of shock. It is a endogenous catecholamine with a potent alpha-1 and beta-1 stimulant, and clinically used in 0.5 to 30 microgram per kg per minute, resulting in potent vasoconstriction. It is used as a first-line agent in severe distributive shock, but several studies in adults have shown that in hyperdynamic septic shock, use of norepinephrine as an initial agent is more likely to result improve in blood pressure and survival compared to dopamine. The important issue of regarding the use of norepinephrine of noradrenaline is that it may cause increased myocardial oxygen consumption because an excessive renal mesenteric vasoconstriction due to alpha stimulation. Renal ischemia may be particularly concerned in patient with hemorrhagic shock. The other important issue with the noradrenaline is that extravasation of noradrenaline may cause tissue necrosis and may lead to skin sloughing, and this should be managed with local infiltration of phentolamine. The newer vasopressor agent is levosimendan. It is a calcium sensitizer that can cause administered intravenously in patients with acute congestive heart failure. At therapeutic dose, levosimendan enhances myocardial contractility without increasing oxygen requirement in cases and causes oxygen and systemic vasodilatation. The drug is well tolerated and does not appear any proarrhythmic condition, has minimal potential interaction with other drugs, and does not reduce long or short-term 30 days and does not reduce long or short-term survival. This is the chart showing all the vasopressor drugs commonly used in cardiogenic shock of different cardiogenic shock. You can see the norepinephrine is the most common first-line agents of cardiogenic shock. Most benefit demonstrated in septic shock. Dopamine nowadays is said to be a second line in most common in forms of shock. In SOAP2 trial demonstrate that it causes tachyarrhythmias and increased mortality in cardiogenic shock patient when dopamine used as a first-line drug. And newer agent, vasopressin, which acts on beta-1 agonist, and it causes vasoconstriction, and it may be used as a second-line agent in most forms of cardiogenic shock. You can see the levosimendan here, and it is the minimal effect of myocardial consumption. It is an inotrophy and inomodulator. Regarding the epinephrine, which was previously been as an agent of cardiogenic shock, but not nowadays, it is not the drug of choice in case of cardiogenic shock as a vasopressor drug. It is a drug used in anaphylactic shock only. The next is the pulmonary vasoactive agents. Pulmonary vasoactive agents are important in raising blood pressure in patients with cardiogenic shock. They are the inodilators, phosphodiesterase C inhibitors, or nitric oxide. The commonly used is phosphodiesterase 3 inhibitors, that is milnidone, which is even intravenously and used to raise the blood pressure in many countries, and in our countries also as in patients with surgical operation raising blood pressure. Vasopressor should be titrated to mean arterial pressure at a goal of mean arterial pressure up to 65 millimeter of mercury. Some adjunctive agents are such as hormones, cortisol and thyroxine should be in adequate level in patients with cardiogenic shock, as because it maintains the vascular tone. This is the important graph table for choosing the agents of cardiogenic shock. If the shock is unknown etiology, dopamine is the preferred drug. In case of hypovolemic shock, no drug is used, only fluid and blood should be used. In case of acute decompensated shock, dobutamine, dopamine, previously been told. In cardiogenic shock, dopamine. In patient with hyperdynamic sepsis, dopamine and noradrenaline. In case of anaphylactic reaction, it is the epinephrine. Adrenaline should be used. In case of anesthesia-induced hypotension, phenylephrine and ephedrine may be used. It is a very important table for choosing the agents of cardiogenic shock. Hemodynamic monitoring is very important in patients with using the vasopressor drug. Continuous blood pressure monitoring with in patients with cardiogenic shock. Continuous blood pressure monitoring with arterial line, telemetry, continuous pulse oximetry, temperature, respiratory rate, and cardiac urine output are mandatory parameters for monitoring a patient with cardiogenic shock. A careful attention should be paid on a potential drug-drug interaction because three important drugs which are commonly used, dopamine, dobutamine, and noradrenaline, should not be used in a single channel. They had drug interaction among them. Drugs should be generally administered through central line catheters using volumetric infusion pump that delivered precise flow rate of delivering the drug. Complications, there are some complications using the vasopressor and the inotropes, which may causes potential toxicity at the same time when they increase the blood pressure. Tachycardia and tachyarrhythmias resulting from beta-1 stimulation can limit the use of these agents in patients with underlying cardiovascular disease. These drugs may depress the ventricular systolic function, resulting in increasing the afterload and secondary to ischemia. Arterial vasoconstriction can compromise the splanchnic and renal perfusion, and peripheral limb ischemia may be occur, and digital necrosis may occur in case of prolonged use of this vasopressor drug. Now, the thrombolytic therapy. Although thrombolytic therapy reduces the mortality in patients with myocardial infarction, its benefit with the cardiogenic shock secondary to MI are disappointing. When used early in the course of MI, thrombolytic reduces the likelihood of subsequently developing of cardiogenic shock in the initial event. Next comes the important issue of doing a coronary angiogram in patients with cardiogenic shock. The most important investigation in patients diagnosed with cardiogenic shock is coronary angiogram. In coronary angiogram, 15% patients have severe significant left main disease and 50% have triple vessel disease. Mortality with the culprit vessel is as per with 78% patient had with mortality in culprit lesion in left main. In Cepheus graft occlusion at 69.7% mortality. Dominant SARC and LAD has equal mortality rate with 42% each, and RCA with 37%. Depending on the institutional resources, patients may proceed to coronary artery bypass graft, hybrid coronary artery bypass graft with PCI, or emergent cardiac transplant in case of patients with cardiogenic shock. Now, the important issue of PCI strategy in patients with cardiogenic shock. The shock trial provided a strong evidence of supporting the use of PCI in cardiogenic shock. Overall mortality in shock trial at 30 days was similar between the revascularization and medical therapy group. However, 6 months mortality rate were significantly lower in the revascularization cohort, about 50%, in comparison to medical therapy group, which was 63%. Subgroup analysis of shock trial demonstrate that there is a non-significant trend towards the increased 30 days mortality in elderly patient receiving early revascularization versus medical stabilization. There is another important trial which is known as culprit shock trial. Culprit shock trial is a complete revascularization addressing both culprit and hemodynamically non-culprit lesion. Has historically been preferred strategy in patients with AMI and cardiogenic shock. That is doing the both culprit and non-culprit lesion in patients with AMI with cardiogenic shock, and was recommended in recent guidelines. However, this paradigm has recently been challenged. The culprit shock, this is the trial of 76 patients with ST segment and non-ST segment elevation MI, identified with culprit and multivessel PCI. Composite endpoints was death and renal failure at 30 days. This trial demonstrated that 9.5% absolute risk reduction of composite primary endpoints in culprit lesion group, lesion only group. The culprit shock trial contradicts widespread current use of the prior study of non-shock patient, that is Janami trial, PRAMI trial, had that suggested that there may be a benefit in complete revascularization. There is an important recent trial of PCI revascularization in case of cardiogenic shock, that is the CAMIR NIH trial with done in Korea. It is a large trial of about 650 patients. These risks are almost similar to that of the shock trial. The risk of all cause of death at 1 year were significantly lower in the multivessel PCI group versus the culprit vessel only. These are the dimensions of patients intervention in patients with cardiogenic shock. Larger trial that stratified patient according to DOT to LV unloading time in with randomization of culprit lesion versus multivessel PCI are needed to resolve the discrepancy between the shock, culprit shock, and CAMAR strategy registry finding. Now they are patient with cardiogenic shock with coronary artery bypass graft. Coronary artery bypass graft is done in patients with critical left main disease, triple vessel disease, and common findings in patients with cardiogenic shock. The potential contribution of ischemia in the non-infract zone contributes to the deterioration of already compromised myocardium. Recent several studies have shown that emergency CABG in patients with AMI complicated by cardiogenic shock are associated with high 30-day mortality and are independently predicted by severe preoperative hemodynamic instability, presence of STEMI. Satisfactory long-term survival is observed in patient who survives the operation, demonstrating the benefit of an urgent CABG. Now the important dimension is that it is shown that there is an excellent long-term patency of the Lima graft coupled with advances in minimal invasive techniques and advances in stent technology. Hybrid coronary revascularization procedures are the compromising treatment modality for cardiogenic shock patients with multivessel disease. Hybrid coronary revascularization means combined surgical bypass with PCI during same procedure or within 60 days. Now the mechanical circulatory device, these are for patients with cardiogenic shock who do not respond to positive inotropic drugs or vasopressor drug. Urgent consideration should be given to give the support, mechanical support with an extracorporeal membrane ECMO or IABP or percutaneous ventricular assisted device. Should be made in consultation with advanced heart disease specialist, an intervention cardiologist, or a ventricular assisted device or a transplant surgeon. This evaluation should be managed with a multidisciplinary team. Extracorporeal membrane oxygenation use technology derived from cardiopulmonary bypass graft that allows gas exchange outside the body. In addition, with circulatory support also to be provided. The ECMO has 3 different types: veno-atrial ECMO, veno-venous ECMO, or artery-venous ECMO. These are the diagrammatic picture of the veno-atrial central peripheral ECMO and veno-venous ECMO. This is the IABP. IABP is a ventricular assisted ventricular device which reduces systolic left ventricular afterload, and diastolic coronary perfusion pressure is increased, thereby increasing in cardiac output and improving cardiac blood flow. As because coronary vessel gets its blood flow during diastole, so during diastole coronary perfusion is increased. IABP is an effective for initial stabilization of patients with cardiogenic shock. However, an IABP is not a definitive treatment. These are the indication and contraindications of IABP. IABP should be placed distal to the subclavian and proximal to the renal arteries. Now the important issue of a cardiogenic shock patient with another important management of modalities is continuous renal replacement therapy. Acute kidney injury occurs in patients with cardiogenic shock about 13 to 28%. and 20% of patient requires a continuous renal replacement therapy. So renal replacement therapy should be done in patient when needed in patients with cardiogenic shock. This is the different, it is a table of different supportive ventilatory circulatory device. In IVP shock 2 trial, IVP and optimal medical management, there is no mortality benefit at 30 days, 6 months, or 12 months. And the others are like this in this graph. Then I have two important slides for the students, that is the Killip classification and the Forrester classification, which is important in case of cardiogenic shock. Killip is the, there is no different, Dr. Farhad mentioned the Killip classification in risk stratification of cardiogenic shock. You can see that if Killip is class 4, the patient is in cardiogenic shock, systolic blood pressure is less than 90, then hypoperfusion occurs in oliguria, cyanosis, and sweating occurs, and the mortality is 67%. And the another classification with patients with cardiogenic shock is the Forrester classification. It is an interventional classification depending on the pulmonary capillary pressure and cardiac index. Previously mentioned cardiac and the pulmonary capillary pressure. And if the pulmonary capillary pressure is more than 18 and cardiac index is less than 2.0, it is in 4 and the mortality is 50%. Now some important notes. Now some important notes of cardiogenic shock. Develop in 20% patients in hospitalized patient with acute myocardial infarction. Mortality of such approximately 80% of higher. Very few patients of shock develop immediately after AMI. This thing should be mentioned here, that the patient does not develop cardiogenic shock acutely. It gives time, some time. So a patient with AMI, when his blood pressure is 100/60 or 100/70, after 1 hour, the blood pressure, when you are monitoring the blood pressure, it comes to 80/60. Then immediately intervene the decreased pressure. We have no time to spare. This is an important message for all of our doctors who treat a patient with cardiogenic shock. About half of the patient develop shock within 24 hours. Prognosis, Dr. Farhad already give up the prognosis. I have to exclude this size. I have some take-home message. Cardiogenic shock requires early identification and treatment. If inadequate regional tissue perfusion and cellular dysoxia persist, multi-organ failure will develop, leading to very high mortality. A new approach that emphasizes on rapid LV unloading and a prompt cardiac coronary vascularization may reduce the mortality of this devastating complication of acute MI. Thank you all for patience hearing. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dhiman. That was a great presentation as usual. And now I would request Dr. Tawfiq to act as a moderator because now it is question and answer time. And Professor Amol is also with us and he can give us valuable insights into this topic. So Tawfiq, any questions that?
Yes, ma'am. There are two questions in the chat box. Dhiman sir might want to answer. One question is, how long should we continue the inotropes in case of shock?
Yes, it is a very important question. Inotropes, as it is mainly the receptor-mediated drug, it can be used up to 5 days, or that means up to 3 to 5 days. In some books it is 3, and in some books it is written up to 5 days. That's because all the receptors are being occupied within 72 to 96, 120 hours. After that, you should taper the drug, and you should the receptor should be free from the, and again you can use it. Repeat.
And the other question is, in case of shock due to mechanical complications, what is your preferred mode of treatment, intervention or surgery?
in case of mechanical shock, as there is if the surgeons are not ready to do, and if there is VSR, if the VSR patient does not give any time, and if the patient develops heart failure, then the surgeons are not ready to do the VSR closure. Then this should be treated with it can be tried with an intervention. And if there is a severe MR with an rupture of the papillary muscle, that can be done with a mitral clip as done as an intervention.
Sir,
So
there is a
basically,
question
we
also.
will have to go for mechanical complications. We have to do either by surgery or by intervention. We have to be aggressive, right? That is the message that we need to learn. And I would like to mention here that I think Tawfiq has done quite a few VSR with the device. And what was your experience, Tawfiq? Would you care to share it with us?
Yes, ma'am. Amal sir is also well aware, and he actually talked once with me about these things. One thing I would like to say, ma'am, the cases we receive or we did, some of the cases we receive late. Once the complication of multi-organ dysfunction starts, patient is going into shock, there is Krebs up to mid-zone, creatinine is rising, SGPT is rising, then it really becomes difficult to close these defects. And as soon as we get a patient and we are sure that this is a case of VSR, and if we can counsel the patient and immediately take, just like primary PCI, immediately take him to cath lab and try to close the defect. Maybe we can take IBP support. In those cases, we have a better outcome. The cases we came out successful were really done very early, and in those cases where there was some dilemma from the patient's party and all these things, and we started late, in those two cases actually we lost those patients. So it is a doable thing. The thing is, if you have a good backup, good team to back you up, in echocardiography, anesthesia, if the surgeons are there to help you, I think in those cases we can really give a good outcome in mechanical complications, like at least VSR.
So, Amol, any comments? And actually, I apologize. I have to leave now, and I would request Tawfiq to wrap up the discussion once it's finished. And thank you so much, Professor Amol, for joining us. We're truly grateful. I just have to be an emergency patient. I apologize for that, and I would like to say goodbye to you all, and you can continue with the discussion. Thank you. So, Tawfiq, you will be responsible for concluding the session. Okay, so
thank you very much. Amal sir, we are already in the 1 hour mark. Would you like to give your comment?
Yes, I have a very small comment because there is no scope because time is over. Number one, we should ask the exam what is the difference between cardiogenic shock and heart failure. Conceptually, severe form of heart failure is the cardiogenic shock. But the student must keep in mind the cardiogenic shock have the onset is suddenness. There is a suddenness. If any severe heart failure patient suddenly develop the sign symptom of cardiogenic shock, we consider it a cardiogenic shock. It is not necessarily the other identity. It is one of the severe form of heart failure. And number two, first I congratulate the Farad and remember very brilliant and no stone unturned. But one thing is keep in mind the stage of shock. Common cardiogenic shock have three stages. Number one is the irreversible, initial irreversible stage. Number two is a progressive stage. Number three is irreversible. First one is reversible. Second one is progressive. Third is irreversible. কোন স্টেজে আমরা চিকিৎসা করছি এটা কিন্তু খুব দরকার। কোন স্টেজে চিকিৎসা করছি এটা কিন্তু দরকার। আর আমরা পরীক্ষাতে জিজ্ঞাসা করে কমন একটা কজ এটা কিন্তু বলতেই হবে যে এমআই, কার্ডিয়াক টেম্পোনেট, ভিটি, বুয়েট এন্ড ম্যাসিভ পালমোনারি এমবোলিজম। ডিটেইল ইউ হ্যাভ টোল্ড ফরাদ এবং দিবান্দা বলেছে সব মাথায় রাখতে হবে বিং স্টুডেন্ট কার্ডিওলজিস্ট, কিন্তু কমন জিনিস টপ করে বলে দিতে হবে। আনকমন জিনিস আমি যেখানে দেখে থাকি যে একটা ইয়াং ম্যান রোড ট্রাফিক অ্যাক্সিডেন্ট ডেভেলপ কার্ডিওজেনিক শক, এর একটা ট্রমা ইজ ফ্যাক্টর, মার্কেটাল ড্যামেজ, ট্রমা মে প্রডিউস মার্কেটাল ড্যামেজ। আর দ্যাট টাইম আমরা জানতে চাই যে রিটেন হিসেবে লিখতে কিনা সিনারিও দিয়ে দিলাম, তাতে বোঝাচ্ছে যে মার্কেটাল ড্যামেজ হচ্ছে একটা ইয়াং 20 ইয়ার্স একটা ইয়াং ম্যান আর ওমেন। আমরা দেখতে চাই সে বললো কিনা যে ট্রমাটিক ইনজুরি produce cardiogenic shock and cardiac surgery, repair of the heart is the treatment of shock. এটুকু একটু বলতে চাই। আর স্টেজটা আমরা আবার খেয়াল করে দিচ্ছি, 3টা স্টেজ। আর ধীমান যেটা দেখিয়েছে এটা কিন্তু only MI related. Ellipse and Freston classification is only acute MI related. আর as a whole cardiogenic shock এর স্টেজ 3টা, initial, non-progressive, progressive, হচ্ছে irreversible। আমরা ডায়ালিসিস করবো না করবো এই টাইম নাই বলার, এটা ডিটেল। থ্যাংক ইউ। আমি এটা বলে শেষ করলাম যে স্টেজ জানতে হবে, কমন কজ জানতে হবে এবং একটা আনকমন কজ জানতে হবে যে স্ট্রেস ট্রমা এনি সিনারিও ক্যান বি গিভেন ইন। থ্যাংক ইউ।
স্যার অনেক জায়গায় সোয়ান গজ ক্যাথেটারাইজেশনের কথা অনেক সময় বলা হতো, এটা কি স্যার এখনো রেলেভেন্ট?
এখন সোয়ান গজ ক্যাথেটার রিলেটেড না, কিন্তু ইনভেসিভ হেমোডাইনামিক মনিটরিং এখন স্টিল নাও
all patient with actually, আমাদের ঠিক বলতেন, all patient with shock or hypotension, ICU, invasive hemodynamics is very much important. Regarding cardiogenic shock, time duration of hypotension and hypoperfusion should be more than half an hour. That is important. At least half an hour or more than half an hour.
বলতে চাই যে আমি যখন জিজ্ঞাসা করে পরীক্ষায় হোয়াট ইজ দ্য ডিফারেন্স বিটুইন হার্ট ফেলিয়ার এন্ড কার্ডিওজেনিক শক, তখন কিন্তু অনেকে একবারে হঠাৎ করে স্পেল বাউন্ড হয়ে যায়। কিন্তু এটা কিন্তু তারা বুঝতে পারে যে সিভিয়ার ফর্ম অফ হার্ট ফেলিয়ার ইজ ভেরি ক্লোজ টু দ্য কার্ডিওজেনিক শক। সিভিয়ার ফর্ম অফ হার্ট ফেলিয়ার এটা আলাদা, ডু নট নেসেসারিলি দ্য ডিফারেন্ট আইডেন্টি কনসেপ্ট দ্য সিভিয়ার ফর্ম অফ হার্ট ফেলিয়ার। কিন্তু অনসেট একটা কনিক হার্ট ফেলিয়ার ছিল, হঠাৎ করে তার পালস বৃদ্ধি এবং কার্ডিওজেনিক শক অন দা ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড অফ হার্ট ফেলিয়ারের ম্যানেজমেন্ট হয়তো কোথাও ত্রুটি হয়েছে, অথবা সে মেনটেন করতে পারে নাই, অথবা প্রেসিপিটেটিং ফ্যাক্টর প্রেসিপিটেট করেছে টু লিড টু কার্ডিওজেনিক শক। অতএব হার্ট ফেলিয়ার এবং কার্ডিওজেনিক শকের মধ্যে ডিফারেন্সিয়েশনটা খুব ভালো করে জানতে হবে।
স্যার ফাইনালি একটা ইন্টারেস্টিং কোয়েশ্চেন একজন করেছেন যে একজন যেখানে প্রাইমারি পিসিআই করা যাচ্ছে না সেখানে কার্ডিওজেনিক পেশেন্ট শকের পেশেন্টকে কিভাবে ফিব্রিনো থ্রোম্বোলাইসিস করা যেতে পারে, এই ব্যাপারে কি কোনো স্পেসিফিক প্রোটোকল বা কোনো পলিসি আপনি ফলো করেন কিনা?
এটা যে আমাদের যে রিমোট এরিয়ার জন্য যে টেরিটরিয়াল যে বেরিয়েছে বোলাস ডোজ উইদাউট এনি মানে উইদাউট এনি মনিটরিং, এটা আমরা ট্রাই করতে পারি। যেমন আমি একটা প্র্যাকটিক্যাল বলি যে আমার শ্বশুরের ঠাকুরগাতে হার্ট অ্যাটাক করেছিল, ঠাকুরগাতে কিছুদিন আগে, 1 মাস আগে রাত, তখন আমি একটা জোগাড় করে লগাটিসকে ফোন করে রাত নিয়ে চাইলেই করতে পারে, কিন্তু চাইলেই কিন্তু
এই ব্যাপারে আমার এক্সপেরিয়েন্স আছে, কিন্তু আমি একটা জিনিস ক্লিয়ারলি মানে বলি চাইতেছে যে আমি পেরিফেরাল মেডিকেল কলেজে কার্ডিওলজিতে কাজ করা আমার অনেক একটু অভিজ্ঞতা ছিল। তো ইন পেশেন্টস উইথ কার্ডিওজেনিক শক উইথ এমআই থ্রম্বোলাইটিক দেওয়া যাবে পেশেন্টকে আগে ডোপামিন দিয়ে, উইথ ডোপামিন ব্লাড প্রেশারকে রেজ করে তারপরে আমরা অবশ্যই আমরা থ্রম্বোলাইটিক দিতে পারবো। এবং এই ক্ষেত্রে আমার একটা ইম্পর্টেন্ট ইস্যু আছে ফর দি স্টুডেন্ট এন্ড অল জুনিয়র ডক্টরস। এ পেশেন্ট উইথ কার্ডিওজেনিক শক, কখনো একটা পেশেন্টের শক আছে, বিপি নট রেকর্ডেবল, নেভার ইউজ ডোপামিন এন্ড ডোবোটামিন টুগেদার, ইউ কান্ট ইউজ, ইট ইজ অ্যাবসলিউট, ইউর বিপি উইল নেভার রাইজ। এবং কমনলি বাইরের প্র্যাকটিস হচ্ছে এটা যে ডোবোটামিন একসাথে 2 হাতে চালাই দিবে, এবং এটা কিন্তু করা যাবে না, কারণ ডোবোটামিন দিলে প্রেসার কখনো রেজ করবে না। ডোবোটামিন ফার্স্ট ড্রাগ অফ চয়েসে ডোবোটামিন দেওয়ার কিছু ইন্ডিকেশন আছে। একটা ইন্ডিকেশন হচ্ছে ডাইলেটেড কার্ডিওমায়োপ্যাথি, আরেকটা হচ্ছে আফটার সার্জিক্যাল অপারেশন, সার্জিক্যাল ওটিতে আপনার ব্লাড প্রেসারকে তোলার জন্য ওনারা আমি দেখছি there is a গাইডলাইন এরকম কথা লেখা আছে যে টু ইনক্রিজ দি ব্লাড প্রেশার আফটার বাইপাস সার্জারি। এই দুইটা জায়গা ছাড়া ডোবোটামিন until the systolic blood pressure is more than 80 or 90, in some books it is 80, in some books it is 90, you can't use dobutamine and dopamine together. You
কিন্তু
first use
ধীমান দা, আমার একটা কোয়েরি আছে, এরকম হাইপোটেনশনে কি নরএড্রিনালিন আমরা দেখছি এখন কিন্তু সার্জিক্যাল আইসিইউ বা সার্জিক্যাল পেশেন্ট দে আর ভেরি মাচ ফন্ড অফ নরএড্রিনালিন।
না, yes, আমি তো বলছি নরএড্রিনালিন এখন বলা হচ্ছে যে ফার্স্ট লাইনার, আমি কিন্তু দেখাইছি আপনার ইয়ের মধ্যে, টেবিলের মধ্যে নরএড্রিনালিন কি এখন বলা হচ্ছে ইট ইজ দি ফার্স্ট লাইন অফ ড্রাগ and in all forms of shock, in all forms of shock.
অশোক, আমরা ইরেভার্স মানে লো ব্লাড প্রেশার আগে নরেন, দেন ডোপামিন, তারপরে ডোপামিন। এটা কিন্তু ঠিকই বলছে ধীমানদা। কিন্তু আমার মনে হয় তৌফিক, আমি একটু করি,
Sure.
ক্লোজ করবা, এখন ক্লোজ করবো না ডিসকাস চালা যাবে?
স্যার, আপনার কিছু লাস্ট কমেন্ট থাকে দিতে পারেন স্যার, আমরা 1 ঘন্টার বেশি চালাচ্ছি অলরেডি, আর মেবি শেষ করতে চাই। আপনি স্যার যদি কিছু বলার থাকে লাস্টে অবশ্যই বলতে পারেন।
স্টেজটা এবং হার্ট ফেলিয়ার এবং কার্ডিওজেনিক শক যেন ক্লিয়ারলি নলেজ থাকে, কখন আমরা কার্ডিওজেনিক শক বলবো, কখন আমরা হার্ট ফেল সিভিয়ার ফর্ম অফ হার্ট ফেলিয়ার বলবো, এবং ডিমান্ডের ক্লাসিফিকেশন গুলো এমআই সেট নিয়ে এগুলো যেন অবশ্যই মনে রাখে। এমআই এর মডালিটি সেট, এমআই এর Thank you.
I would like to thank the speakers for their excellent and elaborated lecture. I would like to thank Professor Amol Kumar Choudhury sir for being with us and giving valuable inputs. Finally, I would like to thank the participants who have been with us with patience. I hope this helps you in your exam. With this, I would like to conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you.